Hi, welcome to yet another Zoom remote broadcast. This broadcast is being shared with local media outlets, not only local PEG Access channels on the South Shore, but also 95.9 WATD, specifically Monday Night Talk. My name is Kevin Tocci, and this particular conversation that we're having, a lot of these conversations that I've been hosting via this Zoom platform has been COVID-19 related. And joining us for this particular special segment is, if you're seeing this visually, of course, next to me, if it's staggered correctly, is Peter Brown. Peter owns a business. He's also somebody who is a member of multiple Chamber of Commerce. I think he was recently the chair of the Plymouth Area Chamber of Commerce. Peter, welcome to the segment.
Thank you, Kevin.
Okay. Also joining us are two other business men. Richard Rosen. Richard Rosen, who is not only someone who owns two restaurants, a proprietor, he and his family, McGuigan's Pub and the patio at McGuigan's, but he's a successful realtor. Welcome to this segment, Richard.
Thanks, Kevin.
And then also joining us is Robert Hayes. Mr. Hayes owns, I believe it's Autotown. Am I correct, Robert?
Yes, sir.
And those locations are in Whitman, in Abington. And the idea of this conversation is to kind of talk about how this unprecedented situation with COVID-19, the coronavirus, has impacted our lives, specifically business in general. I'll start with Richard Rosen, who has multiple businesses. Richard, you're somebody who, again, up until the beginning of March, your businesses it was business as usual until we found out that we needed to start doing things differently. There was an order put in place as to closing restaurants and having social distancing. You're somebody who also, is well-versed as to other businesses in many of the surrounding communities. How has this impacted folks who, open up and offer services to the public?
Well, Kevin, it's pretty bad. Being the owner of a couple of restaurants, we employ 70 people. And the night that the governor made the announcement, I literally had waitresses crying. This is going to have a real bad impact on a lot of people for a while. Let's talk about the restaurant business for a minute. You have these restaurants that most of these restaurateurs don't own their own business. They're tenants. So now they're faced with the first of the month and they have to pay their rent. Well, they've been closed since, the 16th of March. But think about those same people that ordered all this food and liquor for what was the busiest day of the year for me and a number of other restaurants, being St. Patrick's Day. So now they have these walk-ins full of food that they can't pay for. They have all this liquor that they've ordered that they can't pay for, and they have their rent that they can't pay for. So, it has a profound effect all the way down the line because it isn't just restaurants. Think about a hairdressing salon or a travel agency or all these other businesses. And, people always think, and Bob and I have had this conversation many times, that people think that because you own your own business, that, you make $1 million a day and you're the wealthiest person in the world. When the fact of the matter is, and it's really showing now, is that most businesses are sustainable from month to month. Most businesses don't make what everybody in the world thinks that they make. And not only is it the businesses that are going to start to fail, but the poor employees who, a lot of them live paycheck to paycheck. I have a cook in one of my restaurants that lives in a rooming house. I know he doesn't have the money to pay his rent next week. I mean, so it's a profound effect on everybody and everything. The only difference that I see, and I'm also a landlord, so some of my tenants certainly aren't going to be able to pay their rent. Literally 20 minutes ago, I get a phone call from one of my tenants that happens to own a nail salon who asked me about foregoing rent. So, I mean, this is going to go on and on and on, and there's a lot of people that are going to go out of business. But the light at the end of the tunnel, in my opinion, is not the train coming at you. But I've been around for a while, and I've been through 3 real estate downturns, and we've all gone through a recession. And in those particular times, the economy was bad, and it took a long time for those to get better. I mean, literally years. What we have now is an economy that was stopped in its tracks on purpose, and the economy was screaming a month ago. The economy was doing great. Everybody was doing great. I firmly believe, being an optimist, that when this ends, and hopefully soon, that the economy will take off again, and maybe even a little bit better than it was, because life as we knew it 4 weeks ago will never be the same again.
So I'll go to Peter. Peter, again, you owning a business in Pembroke, and it's service related as well. But you interact with other folks who have businesses. As someone who is a member of multiple Chamber of Commerces, what are you hearing from? What are you experiencing as a business owner? What are you hearing from other business owners? Is it very similar to what Richard has said?
So it's exactly what Richard had said, and seeing it. So I was the chair for the Plymouth Chamber. I'm also vice chair for the Pembroke Chamber this year, and the restaurants and the service industries are getting killed right now. We're trying to keep up with the takeout, the delivery services, employ people to buy gift cards to support their local service industries, like the hairdressers, nail salons. But the shutdown that they've had, this screeching halt that's gone on, people didn't have money put aside. A lot of businesses didn't have money put aside for this kind of action. So there's going to be a lot of businesses that aren't going to open when this settles out, if it does settle out anytime soon. As far as my business goes, just like everybody else, we're essential services, so we do a lot of transportation companies. But on my business end, I had to let some people go. We're scaled back our hours and our area of coverage, and we used to have 2 guys in every truck. Now we can't do that anymore because of social distancing. A lot of the fleet services are having the same issues, so they're instead of sending 1 truck, they have to send 2 trucks to the same location to do a job. The stimulus package that we just got, and the SBA loans that are out there, it's enough to keep us to go. If this continues through the summer, to keep us going, but there's a long-term effect that's going to happen, specifically for restaurants and service industries, that we should start thinking about addressing now, so that they can reopen in some sort of time of fashion. And like with the real estate, you have businesses that are renting from, like Richard's real estate companies and stuff, that they can't pay the rents. Going to have to be some loans and some givebacks for that, so that these people can be back on their feet.
Bob Hayes, I would ask you the same question in regards to your business, where you offer, if folks want to, if they have their own businesses, or if they're in construction or they're in the trades, you have a variety type of vehicles. How has it affected your business and folks who might have been thinking about purchasing a new vehicle, or someone or a company looking to add to their fleet? How has that affected you and anybody in your industry?
Well, I think, Kevin, what's happening to all the other industries is also happening in the automotive industry. One thing I've heard is I've spoken to several business owners over the phone, because everybody's trying to rally around and figure out what they're going to do, is all these small businesses, whether it's 5 employees or 50 employees, the owners of the businesses are very concerned with what's going to happen with their employees. They're concerned that their employees are at risk, as Richard spoke about, having people that are going to have to pay rent and can't afford to do it. And I think that's a genuine concern with a lot of small businesses all throughout the country. They're worried about where their employees going to be when this is over. And this is definitely having an effect across the board. I deal with all commercial vehicles, so what happens is we're dealing with tradespeople, people that come in their onesies and twosies and threesies, and they're not coming in and they're not spending for the simple reason of they don't know when they're going to be back to work. I mean, you got Marty, the mayor of Boston, stopped all construction in Boston. Well, all of those people live all within a 50 to 100 mile radius of the city of Boston, and they're all out of work. So when that happens, it not only puts all of them out of work, but it puts everybody in the small restaurant business, in the Myron Pa store, in any of those places, puts them all out. So the ripple effect is tremendous.
Kevin, can I say something, Kevin?
Yeah, absolutely. This is an open conversation.
So my 2 small restaurants employ 70 people. It's hard to believe, not all full time, but we have 70 employees. So we closed the patio, which did not have a big base for a takeout business. But McGuigan's Pub is open for takeout. Now the first week, because I want to keep as many employees working as I can. So the first week we were open from 11:30 to 8. Well, we didn't do much of a lunch business anyway because that business really goes to the sub shops and stuff. But this past week, we changed the hours from 4 to 8. And our business has been terrific. So we're keeping around a dozen people working. And I'm going to tell you something, it's all takeout, but we're keeping around a dozen people working. That the customers have been extremely generous in the tips that they're giving to the restaurant employees. Very encouraging. We had a local bank come in and buy $500 worth of gift cards, which was really, really nice. And it helps everybody because as long as we can meet the payroll, I'll stay open. I'll stay open and we'll keep going. However, that's changing on a daily basis because some restaurants that were open for takeout didn't have a big base for takeout, and all of a sudden people aren't just going to go there. They're closing. So it's very fluid. Now, on my real estate side, as Bob was referring to, Marty Walsh shut down the city of Boston. Well, thank goodness they didn't shut out down here because literally thousands more employees would be out of work if they shut down the construction business out here. We're allowed to keep going. The ripple effect again in the economy is just amazing. And a lot of good comes out of this with people that a lot of good will come out of this at the end of the day, hopefully.
This feels like an extension of, the horrific events that we suffered during 9/11, but this is a global thing that's happening. We know that we've seen this pandemic spread from country to country, from continent to continent. Any thoughts? Please feel free to openly share your concerns with how long this can go on. We know that Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker initially had closed schools until April, the beginning of April. He has since pushed that back to May. There's even reports out there that there could be different scenarios as to when we could be past this and we could return to this thing that we once knew as normal. And I don't think we'll never see the normal we were experiencing prior to this pandemic. Pete, I'll go to you. Give me your thoughts.
I think if anything, it's taught us that we got to be ready for anything now. This is not a blizzard. This is not a weather event or anything like that. This is something that's totally unexpected. So now what we're experiencing is we have a lot of suppliers that we deal with. They've all gone COD. So we don't have terms with anybody right now because everybody's afraid of what's going to happen next week. So as a small business owner, my father always taught me to put the rainy day fund aside. So now now we're going to have to teach other businesses when they come back to be prepared for something like this. The other thing that I'm seeing as far as the chamber and the local businesses is a lot of camaraderie. We're all trading information. We're all reaching out to each other to try to get everybody back up to speed from what we can what we can share as far as loans or unemployment insurance or anything. And I see a lot of that, like what Richard said. We're seeing business people and stepping up and supporting their local service industries and trying to keep them afloat. I don't know. It's just this. I've never seen anything like this, and I just remember my dad when we went through the gas lines, and I mean, we learned how to survive, and so I just trying to instill in my employees, the ones that laid off and the ones that kept, that we've been here 42 years and we're going to be here longer than that. And it's just got to be patient and help the person next to you and just be careful.
I want to go back to
Kevin, you touched on schools, not to interrupt, but you did touch on schools, and that's a whole nother large segment of people that are out as the current time. If you as you know, moving forward, teaching and learning is happening. Most school districts, in fact, if not all school districts in the Commonwealth, are doing remote teaching and learning for students. I know that Whitman-Hanson has been on the forefront of making sure that everybody has a device, whether it be Chromebooks you can pick up, you can make an appointment in the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District, so that you can have interaction with your teacher, and the teachers are hard at work making sure that students are learning. But you have a giant segment of that population that are uncontracted, that are now, whether it be from rubbish pickup to cleanup, it's just a huge body of people throughout the Commonwealth that, again, have put out of schools so that they're out, and it's no one's fault. No, nobody's blaming. I don't think there's anybody to blame here. I see a lot of finger pointing at politicians, and I think that's second string quarterbacks that have never been elected that always can say, oh, they should have done this, or you should have, you could have, you would have. This is unprecedented. These people are working as hard as they possibly can, from the governor on down, all the way up to the top of the chain, to make this thing move forward. And it's just one of those things that it's difficult. This is a time for unity. This isn't a time for pointing fingers. This is a time to show the country how strong we are and how great this country is, and pull together, and let's get through this together. Let's make this work. Let's learn a lesson from it. This is a lesson learning time.
Again, if you are just tuning in, this is a special Zoom, remote Zoom broadcast that is being widely distributed on multiple media platforms, not only local cable here in and around the South Shore and across the Commonwealth, because that's where it's being shared right now, is across the Commonwealth. But it's the focus of the folks who are, that you can see or you can hear, are South Shore businessmen and gentlemen who understand, have the finger on the pulse of what's going on in multiple industries, and so that's why they're here. And Peter Brown, Tiny and Sons Glass, and also a member of multiple chambers of commerce, Richard Rosen, who owns multiple businesses, 2 restaurants, McGuigan's Pub and the Patio, as well as Rosen Realty, and Bob Hayes, who is owner of Autotown, with locations in multiple communities, Whitman and Abington. Richard, you were gonna follow up with what's going on regarding businesses and business practices, and I know Peter had mentioned you in regards to sharing information and how important it is. Do you feel that there is a camaraderie, that there is information being shared so that everybody can kind of make it out on the other side when we see the number of coronavirus positive tests and folks who are affected start declining?
Absolutely. For instance, we are able to go forward with the construction business. They issued 9-page guidelines of what you can do, can't do, what's closed, what's open. They then subsequently released other documents if you are building, what you need to do. And one of the stipulations, one of the requirements, is that you have a hand washing station. Well, even there's just a lot of confusion in everything right now. There was even confusion in how we needed to build hand washing stations. So now I'm finding, I'm getting a call from another builder. I'm calling another builder. So that's a very minor thing, but it's very important because we don't want to do it we want to do it correctly. You have to have an area where the water can drain, and you have to have certain sinks and stuff like that. But I find, I'm calling other people calling me, and it's working, and it's nice to see. Same thing in the restaurant business. I'm on a board that is actually Monday coming out with a list of all the restaurants that are open for takeout and delivery in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. It has to do with the Phantom Gourmet, has to do with a restaurant group, and it changes daily. So we're going to be on top of that, and the list will be distributed so people will see what's open, what's closed. But again, it's people sharing in the restaurant business things that are going on and things that are happening.
I guess I would ask is, we don't know when we can relax the social distancing, when we can start collectively, whether we go to restaurants or we go to large gatherings, whether it's a concert or a play or to the movies. The longer this goes on, what are your thoughts collectively as to the damage that can be done to business? If this stretches into the summer and beyond, could we see businesses that might have been able to sustain for the first couple of months go away because they're not built that way? There wasn't a plan in place for that. Peter?
Well, certainly. And we're starting to see it now. We're seeing a lot of people just shutting their doors because they know they're not going to be able to make it through the summer. And I don't think there's anything that the government can do unless they can corral this virus. Is that everybody has been helping each other trying to survive. But the way the virus is going, it looks like it's going to be another at least 2 months before we see any kind of normalcy that's going to happen. There's a lot of businesses, a lot of startups that just started. I mean, a lot of local businesses. Perfect example is Plymouth Center. The downtown, they were gearing up for the 400. So there was a lot of businesses that came in just specifically to be there for the 400. A lot of the events get canceled, so these businesses were relying on these events. They're not going to be around by the end of the summer. We're seeing nonprofits canceling a lot of profitable events through the summer that a lot of these nonprofits are probably going to be going away by the end of the year. So we're going to have to sit back and look and see who is viable, who can survive it, and try to help those people that can survive. And the people that don't, try to help them so they can get acclimated to either get jobs or get relocated someplace else so that they can survive. But it's going to be a long haul.
Peter, I'm going to come back to you in a minute for the about the America's Hometown celebrating 400, but I want to give Bob and Richard a chance to kind of weigh in and give their thoughts on if this does extend beyond a month, 2 months, we end up going into the fall. Richard, your thoughts?
So every day that this goes on, it's a little bit worse for a lot of businesses and employees. Let's not forget the employees.
Sure.
Every day. I mean, so, I don't want to be the doctor of doom, but, what about the hairdresser that's a single mother that can't work, has no money? I mean, there are so many of those stories, but the longer that this goes, the worse it's going to be. I mean, already, and it's only been a couple of weeks, and it goes back to what I said originally, people have this misunderstanding that if you're in business, you're making a fortune. It's not true. And this will show it. I mean, last week, I'm not going to tell you who it was, but I was talking to a banker, and he said, yeah, we got a call from the landlord that said this guy called and said, been there 5 years. Said, I can't go on. I'm done. The keys to the store in the mailbox. I mean, the longer we go, there are going to be way more stories like that. And it's tough. I mean, what if you own a nail salon or a couple nail salons? I mean, it's just horrible. And the longer it goes, to go back to your question, the worse it's going to be. And every day it goes, it's going to be that much worse.
Bob, I'll go to you, not only talking about tradesmen and folks who might want to purchase vehicles, but you also, you're well versed as far as being someone who has led a school district as the chair for many years. How does this have an effect not only on your industry but also education?
Well, as I referred to earlier, Kevin, every day kids want to be in school. I know that, there's discussions. Kids love the structure. And not only do the students love the structure, the teachers love the structure, the parents love the structure. And when you break that particular mold and you have everybody at home, not only are you not earning money, but it's costing you more money. It's a ripple effect all the way around when people are out of work. Economy, money is obviously what drives an economy, but it has an effect all the way around. Take a look at the class of 2020 this year. Graduation is in jeopardy all over the state, and everybody's trying to make different ideas of how they're going, because the senior year is your senior year. You only get to do it one time. So there's a lot of senior events that these kids are going to miss, and it's difficult. But on the upside, I have to say the American people are very, the ingenuity of American people is amazing. And the discussions we've had about how to do proms, how to do graduations, how to move forward with all of that. But the very support structure, think of all the support structure business-wise that even caters to that segment. Think about the wedding industry, how that goes. Personally, it hits home with me. I have a daughter that's getting married very soon, and they've canceled the event. And it was a big event. It's a thing of, again, it's cash money, it's dollars and cents, and all of that goes away when this continues to go on. On the upside, because you have to look to the upside, this is going to change how businesses do business, maybe like you've never seen before, because we've never seen this type of a problem in the United States. It's never hit home like this. So you're going to see businesses change how they do. I think you're going to see services change. There's going to be new stuff that pops up, such as deliveries and takeouts and all of the above that restaurants, a lot of them didn't cater to before. But you're going to see it change. The United States, the way it was, I don't think you're ever going to see it come 100% back. I think you're going to see the way the business world operates, we're going to be forced to change in a lot of ways.
Kevin, can I add some good news to this?
Please do.
So on the real estate side, people are still buying houses.
Right.
If you have a job where you are employed, people are still buying houses. And the interest rates are so low that there are tons of people that are refinancing their houses. So appraisers are busy, and there's certain segments of our economy that are still doing okay, that are still busy. For how long, I don't know. But right now there is a lot of refi business going on, and there are people buying houses. So that in itself is good news in this whole thing. And there are some segments of our economy that are busy.
It's worth noting that we're actually closing in on a half an hour, and I'm willing to extend this conversation a little bit longer, maybe for another 5 to 7 minutes.
Okay.
I want to go back to Peter. Peter had mentioned about Plymouth. We know that there's been a lot of planning put in place in regards to Plymouth celebrating its 400th anniversary. I think the town of Hanson is another community. There are other communities that are celebrating, being established.
Right.
How does that affect all the work that has gone into place? And we'll use Plymouth for an example, seeing that it's America's hometown, but knowing that there are communities that were planning on doing some kind of a celebration in recognition of being established as a township. I know you've been on the forefront of a lot of those conversations with folks. How is that going to affect travel and people who are supposed to come here and spend money and recognize and all that has been invested by the businesses on the southern tip of the South Shore?
So everything that we've been involved in has been shut down, basically, or on hold. I'm also a trustee in the Pilgrim Hall Museum, and a lot of our events are on hold right now until the government says it's come back to normal. We can't have any kind of event that has any kind of crowds, and that's what's drawing. Was supposed to draw most of the business for these small business people for the 2020. So, like I said before, a lot of businesses started up specifically for this reason. We had a lot of hotels that opened. A lot of development was built around the 2020 and beyond. And that has all been put on hold because of what's going on. And hopefully they'll survive. But there's a lot of small players that came in, mom and pops, like Richard talks about, and Robin talked about, that came in specifically for these events. They're not going to be there for next year. And there's nothing we can do. There's nothing that we can give them to keep them afloat because it was just a one-time deal. That being said, there is plans in place to do virtual tours of the museum. We're working with virtual tours of all the events and all the landmarks and stuff. So there's going to be stuff that's going to be coming up that you could probably join in on video chat or whatever. But it's like everything else, it's on hold until we get to see what's going to happen.
Anything I haven't touched upon in regards to businesses, how they're being affected, how the people who work at those businesses are also being affected? Have we not? Is there an area we haven't touched upon yet, guys?
Well, I mean, from my perspective, my real estate agents, although this house is selling, don't want to come into the office. And in my restaurant, they're all laid off. I mean, so you have these people that work for the hourly wage is very low, but they work for tips. They've got no money coming in. I mean, again, it's a profound effect on a lot of these employees in everything. They're not going to have any money.
And knowing that, here's the other thing, if this does extend, how does this affect manufacturing? How does this affect product supply? I mean, do you have any concerns in that area? Peter, you and I had a conversation in regards to glass that you get shipments in from other countries, right, and that's going to cease. Richard, you're somebody who has a business. What's not to say that there might be a run on poultry or meat, and you might have to trim down your said menu because there's not enough production when it comes to food. And with you, Bob, same thing is what if we don't see any manufacturer? Right now, we see vehicles that are being, GM and other automakers who are being tasked with making other things that are more important, like ventilators for hospitals. How does this affect your supply lines if this thing goes further? I'll start with you, Richard.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we worry about all the time. Are we going to be able to have product? I mean, we have for the takeout, we are offering our full menu plus specials. And the only thing that we'll do is that we'll reduce what we're offering for food if that particular case, comes to fruition. Let's hope it doesn't. You've got to hope that we're going to hit that apex pretty quick and things are going to come down. And, I watched a show the other night with Bill Gates. And listening to him, it's no wonder he's one of the richest guys in the world because the guy is brilliant. Yeah. But he spends his foundation, all his money in his foundation, believe it or not, talking about diseases and pandemics and viruses. And the things he had to say were amazing. But he was saying that you 10 to 12 weeks and that you should close the entire country. I'm not really advocating that, but let's just hope that we're out of this within 10 to 12 weeks and life continues.
Bob, I go to you. Go ahead.
I think you're going to see, and I'm hoping you're going to see, for years and years and years, it started in the 70s when we relied heavily on industries going overseas in Japan, and then it went to China, and we don't manufacture anything anymore. And part of that issue has always been because it can be bought elsewhere cheaper. So we kind of made that as something that we relied on. Now, hopefully, manufacturing will come back to this country and add hundreds and thousands of jobs. People may pay a little bit more for a product, but it'll be a better product, and it supports the United States of America. And that's what we need to do. Again, I hate to be redundant, we need to band together, because it says right on the dollar bill, united we stand, divided we fall. And we need to stand strong with each other, with your neighbors, support each other, buy stuff that is manufactured in the United States, and see how great this country really is. And I think that's where we've lost our way on the last 40 or 50 years. We've relied too much on manufacturing out of the United States, because the key word was it's cheaper, like gasoline. Right now, gas is $1.58 or $1.62 in Whitman on the gas wars. Whitman's probably the cheapest in the state, because we have the gas wars going on, and it goes down every day. So people keep looking for that 3 cents cheaper. It's the American way. Cheaper is better. Well, cheaper isn't always better, because in the end, look what happened to hardware stores. Every town had a couple hardware stores.
Yeah.
Now there's one hardware store per 5 or 6 towns, because it's so difficult to make any money, because every one of the big discount box stores sells all the items that a hardware store might sell a few of, and they discount it right to the base, and it leaves no room. When you go in and you buy $4 worth of nuts and bolts, the hardware store doesn't make any money on that. They have to pay the guy more to explain to you where to get them.
Right.
So that I think may come back in the United States, and it may come back in a strong, strong way. And that's kind of what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that we band together, we stick together, we spend the money and manufacture it here in the USA, and keep us the strongest nation in the world.
Peter, now to you, and I actually mentioned you at the beginning of my comment. Do you want to kind of weigh in on what I had mentioned in regards to being able to get, especially when it comes to like auto glass or something? Folks don't realize that we might see a shortage soon.
Yeah, a lot of the manufacturing is out of country, and like Robin said, it went to the cheapest bidder. Basically, we're seeing that with a lot of supplies throughout the country. And the problem we're having right now is that the people want that product for an inexpensive price, and that's why this manufacturing went across overseas, because they're paying people a quarter of what we're paying people here. So if we're going to have manufacturing come back to America and have these supply chains internal, we got to either change the way the world is how they pay their help, or we're going to have to realize that we're going to have to stop paying more for product, and we're going to have to stop paying people more so they can afford that product. That being said, as far as our supply chain right now, our supplies are pretty good through October. Our issue right now is the COD. A lot of the suppliers are going to COD because they're unsure of what's going to happen next week. Even if you had the best terms you could ever have, we're seeing a lot of the suppliers asking for cash in demand. So unless you have a good cushion or a base that you can borrow from, it's going to be tough for a lot of our small businesses, especially in the automotive industry, that do repairs, to get this product. But in the long run, it's going to weed out a lot of people that shouldn't have been in business in the first place, I believe. And the stronger people that would do this, to do the job right, to stand behind their product, to keep their employees employed, I think will survive. And we just got to work it out.
Okay. So let's get ready to wrap up this remote segment. And I'll give you each an opportunity to say something in closing. Anything you want to kind of leave with the folks who are tuning this in, and we'll start with Pete. I'll start with you. Anything you want to say in closing?
Yeah, my dad left me a business that I can't screw up, and even in this virus crisis that we have right now, I'm blessed that I have a base that I can work with. And as long as I keep doing the job right and keep people happy and keep my employees safe, I think I'll be able to survive. And as far as the chamber and the other businesses go, I'm always here. So anything I can do to help with you, or like I know Richard was talking about statewide restaurants, if you could send me a link for that, I'll share it through my contacts. And Robert, with commercial trucks and product and stuff like that, I'll help you as much as I can. But right now, we're all in this together, and we just got to survive it.
Mr. Hayes, anything you want to say as we close out the segment?
Well, as I said earlier, Kevin, shop local, support your local people. For years and years and years, every sports group, every single town has all of these people that we're asking to us to support them. Please support all your local businesses. They're all struggling, and they're your neighbors. They work locally. They are your neighbors. Help them, support them. We're going to get through this together, as I said earlier, and hopefully sooner than better, because the longer it goes on, the more difficult it's going to be to come back. So stay strong and support your local businesses.
Richard?
Yeah, I just want to say that you need to stay positive. It's hard to say, but stay positive, stay safe, and as I say, this too shall pass.
I want to thank Peter Brown, Richard Rosen, and Robert Hayes for being a part of this segment. I want to thank you for checking out this special Zoom remote broadcast, and stay tuned for more as we're able to find folks to discuss this ongoing crisis in regards to the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic. Thank you.